This is an explainer for the movie titled Case 39 2009. Sit back and enjoy watching. Bradley pulled a bee out of his ear. Bees began to swarm from his eyes. Bees poured out of his mouth in horrifying waves. Bradley was tortured by the bees until his death. In his panic, Bradley crushed his own head to escape the agony. Before this happened, Lilith Sullivan's parents, Edward and Margaret, prepared to burn her alive in an oven while she slept. Lilith woke up suddenly. She threw open the oven door and escaped in terror. However, Edward and Margaret chased her down. Margaret sealed her mouth to keep her from screaming. Edward and Margaret dragged her back into the oven together. To ensure she couldn't escape again, Margaret taped the oven door shut. She turned on the gas. Flames began to engulf the oven. The temperature inside rose rapidly. At the last moment, Detective Mike Barron and his team broke down the door. Emily Jenkins, a social worker, arrived and witnessed the horrific scene. She shoved Margaret aside. Emily cut the tape and pulled Lilith out of the oven. But Edward and Margaret still tried to kill Lilith. Edward wrestled Mike's gun away. Margaret grabbed a knife and attempted to stab Emily. Fortunately, Mike subdued Edward in time. Mike also stopped Margaret before she could attack Emily again. Edward and Margaret were sent to a psychiatric facility. When asked why they tried to kill Lilith, Margaret claimed that since Lilith's birth, accidents had plagued their family. Leaving only her and Edward alive, they believed Lilith was a curse. Emily visited Lilith at the hospital. Seeing Lilith's vulnerable state, Emily decided to take Lilith into her care. Unbeknownst to her, she was inviting chaos into her life. The next day, Emily visited Lilith's original home to collect her belongings. She discovered a strange hole in the basement. It looked like a grave-sized pit. Stranger still, the door to Edward and Margaret's bedroom was covered in locks, as if to keep something terrifying out. Meanwhile, Lilith, now under Emily's care, seemed to thrive in her new environment. She adjusted well at school. Lilith even made a new friend, Diego Ramos. However, tragedy struck the next day. When Emily arrived at work, she was informed by her colleagues that Diego had killed his parents after returning home. Emily rushed to the scene of the crime. The blood-stained pillows made it clear Diego's parents were killed while they slept. Strangely, Diego claimed to have no memory of the event. He was distraught over what he had done. At this point, Emily had no reason to suspect Lilith. That changed when Mike checked the call records from Diego's family. The logs showed a call had been made from Emily's house just before the murders. "I'm not accusing you, Emily," Mike said, "but how do you explain this?" "That's impossible," Emily replied. "I might have called weeks ago, but definitely not recently." "You know me, Mike?" "Why would I?" "I didn't call them, Mike." They confronted Lilith at home about the call. Lilith denied it, but Mike, experienced and sharp, could tell she was lying. Emily sought advice from her psychiatrist friend, Dr. Bradley Sullivan. She asked Bradley to counsel Lilith. Bradley tried to get Lilith to open up. He shared a story from his childhood. "When I was a kid," Bradley began, "I climbed a tree and accidentally put my hand into a hornet's nest. They didn't like that. I got stung over 100 times. They rushed me to the hospital. Ever since, I've been terrified of hornets." That night, when Bradley returned home, he received a strange phone call, and it marked the beginning of something sinister. Shortly after, Emily attended Bradley's funeral. On her way back, Emily noticed Lilith's smug expression. Suspicion began to creep into Emily's mind. Could Lilith have been behind it all? Emily visited Lilith's biological father, Edward Sullivan, in the mental hospital. Edward revealed his belief that Lilith was possessed by a demonic force. He explained that the demon in Lilith manipulates people by amplifying their worst fears through hallucinations. The only time to kill her, Edward said, is when she's asleep. But she rarely ever sleeps. He explained that's why they tried to kill her by putting her in the oven. "But you stopped us," Edward added bitterly. Emily rushed to Detective Mike Barron for help. Before they could act, Mike began experiencing terrifying hallucinations. Lilith conjured the massive black dog Mike had always feared. The dog savagely attacked him. When Mike tried to shoot the dog, his gun misfired, fatally wounding him. Emily later found pictures of Mike and his family at his home. She realized Lilith had orchestrated his death. Enraged, Emily stormed into the living room, flipping over furniture. She demanded Lilith leave her home immediately. But Lilith remained eerily calm. Emily glimpsed Lilith's true demonic face and was horrified. She fled to her room, locking the door behind her. Emily pushed the bed against the door for extra security. But it didn't stop Lilith for long. The pounding on the door grew louder. Emily cowered in the corner, trembling. Soon, Lilith forced her way in. She didn't harm Emily but begged for her love and acceptance. Helpless, Emily pretended to agree to Lilith's demands. While Lilith wasn't looking, Emily crushed sleeping pills and mixed them into a drink. She watched Lilith drink it. Soon, Lilith fell unconscious. Emily doused the house in gasoline. She set the house ablaze. Watching the fire consume the house, Emily felt a moment of relief. To her horror, Lilith appeared unharmed outside the burning house. Emily realized she had underestimated Lilith's power. The next day, Emily decided to flee with Lilith to a remote location. While driving, Emily suddenly pressed hard on the accelerator. She had reached her breaking point. Emily decided to end it all by sacrificing herself and Lilith. Lilith panicked at Emily's reckless behavior. She unbuckled her seatbelt, trying desperately to escape the speeding car. But it was too late. Emily smashed through the guardrail, plunging the car into the lake. As the car sank, Emily and Lilith wrestled for control. Lilith revealed her true demonic nature, her face twisting into a terrifying visage. Emily used all her strength to shove Lilith into the trunk and lock it. Emily opened the car door, preparing to swim to safety. But Lilith grabbed Emily's ankle, pulling her back. In a desperate move, Emily kicked Lilith away with all her might. Emily swam toward the surface with everything she had. Just as she was about to lose consciousness, Emily broke the surface, gasping for air. The car, along with Lilith, sank into the depths of the lake, seemingly taking the demon with it. That's the end of the story. See you next time.